What's going on, y'all? So they tell us every time that the crisis, whatever it may be, is temporary. But somehow the solutions always involve giving the government more control, taking away more rights, and convincing you that ownership itself is the problem. We see it with housing, speech, religion, firearms, politics itself. So tonight we're gonna get into the pattern that they're trying to tell us isn't happening. We're gonna get into that right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What's happening? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God is the standard and masculinity is absolutely not toxic. Today is Thursday, May 28th in the year of our Lord 2026. And we have a ton of stuff to get into. I don't know if we're going to even get through everything that I have prepared today, but as usual, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share the channel, share this episode, help us break out of this algorithm nonsense that we got going on right now. We're still growing, but it has slowed, kind of opposite of what we thought was going to happen. But regardless, every click, every share, every comment matters. And also don't forget, we're on SHR, but we also have an individual channel with the same content, same shows. So if you're not subscribed over there, please do so. I am pleased to say that right after we ended the show last time, we hit 1,000 subscribers, and we're slightly over 1,000 subscribers now. So thank you all so much for that. That's going to open up a lot of opportunity, a lot more opportunities for us over there. So thank you very much. And we're at 1,550, I believe, for on the SHR channel. And so now the goal for the Mission Ready Men briefing individual channel is 1,500. So help me out, share, like, subscribe, do all the things. And we're looking forward to reaching as many people as we can. So thank you all very much for that. All right, y'all, let's get after it. The Islamo-Kami, Zohran Mamdani, is showing exactly what we knew was going to happen. He just gave us the most crystal clear glimpse of where he and the modern left are trying to go. And it's not just rent control, it's not just free bus rides and all the other nonsense, not just tenant protections, but he's talking about transferring ownership of property. And that phrase blew up in all of the media for a very specific reason. Americans, we understand the dangers of that government poses once it starts sounding like it's going to decide who gets to keep property. Now, the housing crisis, housing affordability crisis is very real. I'm not trying to downplay it. It's not a hoax. It's real. And terrible landlords and slumlords are a real thing. But when politicians start talking about redistribution of property rather than enforcement of rules and regulations and laws, that takes the conversation into a whole different direction. And I just want to, Mamdani, he did not hide where he was planning to go by any means. He did not hide it. And I just want to remind everybody of what he said during his inauguration. The warmth of collectivism. You can't move from a capitalist system to socialism in one fell swoop. You have to do it through, you have to do it one crisis, one emergency at a time. And the second that ownership becomes conditional, politics becomes the weapon, the means by which they confiscate everything. Now, Zohran Mamdani, he has this this block by block housing plan, and he talked about when he announced it, he talked about taking aggressive legal action against landlords who he deemed unfit. He took, and the question then becomes who decides who is unfit and all this other stuff. So let's take a listen to that, and then we'll get into it.
Through our new citywide campaign, Fix the City, we will focus on the worst landlords in New York City. When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards.
There it is.
Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits, or even the tenants themselves. Through our new citywide campaign,
tenant takeovers, community land trusts, nonprofit controlled housing, allegedly, aggressive action against landlords. Who decides? Who decides whether these landlords are unfit? What's the criteria by which these determinations are made? These programs, these things are framed by the left, by the people who support them, as anti-greed, anti-slumlord. But what I just heard was redistribution. What I just heard was government control. It's ideological disdain or hostility towards private property itself. And New York already has variations on this, or it's already tried it. And those programs have become financially untenable. They were poorly maintained, imagine that. And just a maze of bureaucracy and red tape that was completely ineffective in handling the crises that they claim they were trying to resolve. And yet, the answer is always from the left: more control, more intervention, more authority taking. And there's no denying that there are areas of New York that are run down, and there's no denying that there are terrible landlords. But there are already enforcement opportunities there to take care of all that. This is just an excuse to take people's property. And I can almost guarantee that there's going to be some landlord, probably multiple, that are doing the best they can, that are maintaining the property, probably aging and who knows what else, that are going to get their property taken from them because some grievance organization approaches some of the tenants and says, hey, look, we can fix this for you. You just have to make this complaint. Next thing you know, that landlord, that property owner, has their property taken away from them. Probably without compensation. I haven't read all of the provisions of it, so I don't know, but I would bet that there is, if they get any compensation at all, it'll be pennies on the dollar. The problem is, underneath all of it, the left sees wealth and property and ownership as immoral. They think that if you have it, it is your responsibility to give it all to someone else. Otherwise, you are selfish, immoral, greedy, you name it. That's why he went after that billionaire and basically doxed him. And if you don't believe me, just listen to the words of his housing. I can't remember exactly what her title is, but she's in his administration, and she had this to say about property ownership.
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
A different relationship to, and did you notice the word in there? A collective good. A different relationship to property. This is just another avenue by which they villainize success. Nobody needs multiple homes. Housing shouldn't be commodified. Profit from housing is exploitation. And it's a pattern. There's always a pattern. First, they target the absolute worst examples, the ones who should be addressed in some formal way. As I said, slumlords exist, and they should be dealt with. But then they redefine the system itself as immoral, and therefore, even the good ones end up as targets. Even the people who maintain their property well and who don't gouge their tenants for rent. Even they, like I said, even they end up as targets of these programs. And then that justifies expanding state authority over everyone. This is not just housing, though. I mean, we've seen this pattern escalate across a number of different areas. Housing is just the latest and most emotionally effective test case right now, because shelter is something that everybody needs. It's existential, basically, which makes people more willing to surrender principles that they would normally defend if they even think about it in those terms. We've seen it with ESG pressure campaigns, banking, blacklist, people getting debanked, speech policing, which we know all too well here at SHR, climate madness, DEI compliance. They don't just regulate behavior. They regulate legitimacy, and they do their best to regulate outcomes. And that's one area where there is significant danger. Because once these institutions decide what's legitimate and what isn't, ownership becomes political. And once ownership becomes political, power is everything at that point. And we all know, we say it all the time here on the show, all they care about is power and control. That's it. All they care about is power and control. And it's not one of the scariest aspects of this is that, well, it's not the government stepping in to try and help people. It's the government deciding who deserves to keep what they own, what they built. And that leads to this thing of fairness becoming the standard rather than rights. And once fairness is established as a standard, it's never gonna, the line is never gonna stop moving. The left is notorious for moving goalposts. They do it all the time. Sometimes they'll do it in the same conversation, in the same sentence. It's a pattern. They identify a crisis, then they create a morally guilty class based on that crisis, and then they frame the opposition to their so-called solutions as selfish or hateful or greedy. And then they expand governmental institutional authority, and it never retracts. Once they expand it, it is expanded permanently. We've seen that model play out with regard to healthcare, with regard to energy, with regard to education, and what we're doing right here, online speech. The crisis becomes the leverage point. And then when people are afraid to speak up, that becomes permission. Every major redistribution scheme promises justice. It promises fairness in the beginning. It promises equality. Dignity is a key buzzword. But eventually somebody is in charge and somebody has to decide who gets what. Somebody has to decide who loses what. And somebody has to decide who has too much, and some of it has to be taken away. And that requires centralized power. That requires an authoritarian state. And authoritarian states never voluntarily relinquish power. So affordable housing is not something that's not something that is outside of reasonable expectations. People are justifiably angry at corrupt developers or landlords or predatory housing practices. Those are legitimate grievances. But there's a huge difference between enforcing laws and redefining ownership, which is what they are attempting to do. And once a society accepts the idea that property ownership is conditional, then freedom becomes conditional as well. And that road gets dark and that road gets ugly quicker than you realize. And that's the road that Mamdani is dragging New York down. And the people who voted for it, let's put it this way. The only people I feel bad for are the people who didn't vote for it and fought against it, and for whatever reason can't leave. But the people who voted for it, who have voted for leftists for years, and maybe now are finally seeing the results of leftist governance in their city, people deserve the government that they vote for, especially if they've been clamoring for it all this time. The best way to red pill a leftist is to give them what they ask for. Well, here we go. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's we're going to get into some election. We're going to get into some runoff election results. But before we do, I just want to let you know that there's a sale at the SHR shop. SHR 25 gets you 25% off all items in the SHR shop. And you can get all of the show t-shirts. You can get the 250 reasons to read source documents tee, which I'm sporting right now. It's a great t-shirt with a great message in honor of our 250th anniversary as a nation. So head over to the SHR shop. Just go to missionreadymen.com and click the SHR shop and check out all of the designs for all the different shows, the 250 reasons to read source documents tee, and the SHR mug and hoodies and a few other goodies that we have over there. So head over there and check that out. All right. So the other day, there was a runoff election in Texas, and John Cornyn lost. 42 years in politics, done because the rules changed and he didn't keep up. John Cornyn ran what I would characterized as a perfect establishment campaign for the Republican Party of 2008. But that party doesn't exist anymore. Ken Paxton ran his campaign like a movement candidate on the right side of a political civil war. And the Republican voters made their choice abundantly clear. I think Paxton won by 30 points, somewhere around there. I don't have the exact figures in front of me anymore, but he he jolly stomped John Cornyn. And I thought Paxton might win, but I was kind of surprised by the margin, honestly. But that margin gives me hope that Texas is not lost. Because it wasn't, like I said, this wasn't a close election. This was a complete annihilation of the old Republican operating establishment. John Cornyn had all the money. He had all the institutional backing. He had Senate seniority, and he had the donor class. I think between the PACs and all of the different organizations that campaigned for him, spent over $109 million or something like that, maybe more. Paxton and Cornyn's campaign directly spent, I believe, about $25 million. Paxton had grassroots anger, Obviously, he had Trump's endorsement, and he had the MAGA base. And his campaign directly, I think, spent $8 million. The old Republican establishment used to reward stability, relationships. It was an old boys club. New Republican politics is a completely different animal. It rewards confrontation. It rewards evidence of loyalty, and not to a man. That the American Pravda would have you believe that it's about loyalty to one man, President Trump, but that's not it. The loyalty is to the cause, the movement, the concerns of the MAGA base. And John Cornyn, who he voted with the president, I believe, 99 point something percent of the time. But he voted to impeach President Trump. And that's something that President Trump didn't forget. I wasn't sure because it took him so long to endorse Paxton. But he voted to impeach Trump. And Trump didn't forget that. And that's not to say that President Trump holds grudges. He obviously does not. If he held grudges, he would never be able to negotiate the way he negotiates. If he held grudges, J.D. Vance would not be the vice president. Let's not forget, early on in J.D. Vance's political career, he was a harsh critic of President Trump. He was one of the people that compared him to a Nazi. So if President Trump held grudges, J.D. Vance would not be the VP. Let's just establish that right off the bat. But he doesn't hold grudges, but he also doesn't forget, as evidenced by his endorsement of Paxton over Cornyn. Cornyn's Ukraine support was liability. His support and vote for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act after Uvalde was a huge liability. He lost all the support from the 2A community for that. All the support. There's video of Sarah Gonzalez confronting him at the NRA annual meeting a few years ago after that. And he had no answer. He wouldn't answer any questions. He got comfortable in DC. That was a liability. And his ability to work across the aisle was a liability. That's kind of a warning label for Republican candidates these days. Because let's be honest, and I've said this before, there can be almost no common ground anymore with the left. There can't. And if you can't trust somebody to tell you what a woman is, if you can't trust somebody to be able to articulate the differences between a man and a woman, if you can't trust somebody to speak the universal truth that there are only two genders, male and female, if you can't trust somebody with that, what kind of common ground can there really be had? If you can't trust somebody to say that killing babies is wrong, what common ground is there? President Trump's Trump-backed candidates have been stacking wins across primaries. He has, in this primary season, he's basically undefeated. Let's get a quick look at that.
Races and Senate races. This is his scorecard, okay? He has endorsed 8 governors. Now, some of these races weren't real close, didn't have a lot of competition, but some of them did. I mean, we saw what happened in Louisiana, the primary of Bill Cassidy. We saw what happened a week ago tonight with Tom Massey in Kentucky. And now we're seeing it again tonight, okay, in Texas. Governor level, Trump endorsed 8. He won 8 times. U.S. House, 101 endorsed. He won 101 endorsed in the House, and he won 101. Let me put on the pencil right here and show you this. U.S. Senate, Sean, he has endorsed 8 candidates. And prior to tonight, he had won 8 times. And now you can take the endorsement from 8 to 9 endorsed, and from 8 to 9 winner. Ken Paxton was outspent 9-1. Got the endorsement from Trump, got the endorsement of Wesley Hunt, the congressman who got knocked out 2.5 months ago. And now we got this setup in Paxton and Tellerico. Many Republicans felt if John Cornyn could win tonight, that he could be an easy winner over Tellerico. We'll never know that now. And a lot of Republicans felt that they could save a lot of money too if Cornyn won. But that did not happen. Here's what will happen, Sean, in November. In Texas, probably the most expensive Senate race that we have seen ever. I mean, we were looking at some of the numbers.
$118 to 0. That's, and I know the left will say, well, that's just primaries. It doesn't really mean anything. We'll see what happens in November. I suspect, I don't know that he'll be undefeated with his endorsements in November, but I suspect it's going to be a pretty high percentage. We had Al Green, dude with the cane, who's filed who knows how many articles of impeachment against President Trump at this point. He lost. That's great, but he lost to a younger, more radical version of himself. So 6-1, half dozen in the other. Not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Maureen Galindo, who we've talked about, also lost. She's the one that wanted to put Jews in internment camps and turn an ICE facility into a castration facility for pedophiles. And Zionists. Don't forget the Zionists. She wanted to castrate them too. It's not looking good for the left right now. And it's early. I know it's early. Anything can happen between now and November. Well aware of that. But right now, it's not looking too good for the left. And I think voters across the spectrum are kind of getting tired of career politicians, people who are institutional fixtures, so to speak, like an Al Green, like Bill Cassidy, like John Cornyn. Those guys are actual reasons, case studies for term limits. Mitch McConnell, who he retired, he obviously, he was another one of those fixtures, another poster child for term limits. There is an anti-establishment mood that isn't isolated anymore. It's not. It's kind of across the board. I would say it's systemic. And I know we're talking about Texas because that was where the runoff election was that we're talking about. But this story is bigger than Texas. It's bigger than Paxton. It's bigger than one Senate seat. The MAGA movement has changed the game. It's changed the reward structure, the incentive structure of Republican politics. Conservative voters don't care how long you've served anymore. I know that there are leftist types who only trust career politicians, but they're obviously ill-informed and aren't really immersed in what's happening. Like we had Vivica Fox and some other people talk about how they only trust career politicians, wouldn't trust somebody like Spencer Pratt to be mayor of LA. They probably don't even spend a couple months a year in LA to know what's really going on. But I digress. Republican voters don't care how long you serve. They don't even really want you to be a career politician. They care whether or not you are going to fight and support the causes that they elected you to support. And if you don't support them, if you turn against them, they will vote you out. Thomas Massie found that out. If you, if you oppose the machine, you'll be good. If you go along with it, you'll be out. Dan Crenshaw found that out. They care whether or not you demonstrate that you understand their frustration and will fight alongside them to alleviate it. And if you don't, they will tell you to kick rocks. The old GOP model, seniority was a big factor. The donor networks, how much money you can raise, was a big factor. It was the Chamber of Commerce type Republicans like Mitt Romney, who I admit I voted for, but the alternative was Obama, so it is what it is. But this managed decline, controlled opposition energy is not going to cut it anymore for conservatives. I mean, that model, Trump blew it to smithereens in 2016. Blew it completely out of the water in 2016. And the establishment types want to convince us that that's temporary, and once President Trump is gone, things will go back to status quo. Well, the problem with that is that we've seen the difference between the status quo and this new era. And nobody who's paying attention wants to go back to that old status quo. It was a hostile takeover, basically. The MAGA movement kicked the door down and said, voters are looking for fighters. They're looking for people who will fight for them. Especially after the censorship battles, which we're kind of still dealing with. The border chaos, illegal immigration, mass deportations, Islamic takeover concerns, which we've talked about on this show numerous times. The cultural radicalism that we're seeing with the transing the kids and all the other radical left-wing lunacy that they're pushing. Conservative voters more and more believe that the system itself is hostile to their way of life. And once voters believe that, compromise is no longer noble. Compromise is cowardice. Compromise is weak. And people don't want weak. We've had enough of that. But check out the pattern, because conservatives who align with the MAGA agenda survive. Republicans who are perceived as obstacles to that agenda, they become targets and they get voted out. Doesn't matter how long they've been there. Doesn't matter how connected they are. Doesn't matter how many Sunday shows they appear on. None of that matters. That's why so many establishment Republicans are shocked that they're losing. John Cornyn really thought, or at least in the beginning, I think the fact that he spent so much money shows that he was scared. But a lot of these establishment Republican types are shocked at the rate at which they're losing. And they haven't pivoted. They're still campaigning like it's 2008 or 2012. And the landscape and the language has changed, and MAGA voters are speaking a completely different political language. John Cornyn didn't lose because he forgot how to play politics. He lost because the voters changed the game. Conservatives don't want managers. They don't want people to manage the decline. They want people who are willing to burn the place down, metaphorically speaking. MAGA isn't just a movement anymore. MAGA has redefined the incentives for Republican politics. And in today's political landscape, being respected in Washington may be more of a liability than an asset. So MAGA has been around for 10 years now. It's not just a phase. It's not just a phase. MAGA is the Republican Party at this point. And that point keeps getting proven every primary. And it's going to continue to be proven. All right, let's shift gears here for a second, because I want to talk about this story. This story really caught my attention for reasons that will become obvious here in a second. There was a person who was suspended because of their position on a certain topic. And it was framed in a different way, but it was obvious what the actual issue was. And I'm talking about a Christian lifeguard in LA County was punished for removing pride flags. He's now involved in a lawsuit and claims that a supervisor told him that his religious beliefs weren't a factor. But Christians are more and more being expected to participate in activities and messages that they believe contradict Scripture. Tolerance back in the day used to mean leave me alone. Now it means I have to celebrate what I believe to be sin in order to appease you. That's not coexistence. That's not tolerance. That's compulsory affirmation. LA County lifeguard Jeffrey Little, he actually requested, he went through the proper channels. He requested a religious accommodation over pride flag duties. They were required to put up these pride flags in their lifeguard towers. And initially, his religious accommodation was approved. And then apparently just a few days later, it was revoked. And it was revoked, according to him, without his knowledge. And so then he was suspended for removing flags from some lifeguard, removing pride flags from some towers without authorization. And if that was the extent of it, if he disobeyed those orders, that would, okay. But that wasn't it. That's never it. Some lifeguard towers, the ones where he removed these flags, were exempt from displaying the flags because they did not have the required hardware under county flag regulations to display the flags. And so he took them down in compliance with that regulation. And he got suspended. And you expect me to believe that it wasn't because of his religious convictions? Come on. We're not stupid. So he sued, and a federal judge has now allowed some portions of this lawsuit to move forward to trial. I'm not entirely sure which portions of it are going to trial, but it's good and kind of shocking in California when you think about it. But here's the thing. He wasn't harassing people who he believed to be homosexuals. He wasn't engaging in any kind of violence, although the left will tell you that taking down those flags was violence. Speech is violence, I guess, according to them. He wasn't mistreating anyone. He's a Christian who said, I am not going to endorse something that my faith teaches me is sinful. And removing the flags was the excuse that they needed. And just so that we're clear, this is the biblical support for what he did matters. It's important. Christians are not commanded to hate people. Christians are commanded to love everyone. But love and affirmation are two completely different things. And this is the distinction that the left, they know. Something's going on. We just went dark for a second, but I think we're back. Christians are commanded to love people, but we're not commanded to affirm or condone what we know to be sinful. And Romans 1 explicitly identifies homosexuality as sinful. 1 Corinthians 6 lists homosexuality among the behaviors that separate people from God before redemption. So we can't just rewrite scripture because culture is uncomfortable with it. And modern culture has repeatedly and often collided directly with biblical Christianity, because Christianity does not teach moral ambiguity. It doesn't teach your version of truth and my version of truth. It teaches truth. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God." We can't conform to the culture. We're not called to mirror the culture at large. We're called to resist worldly culture and compromise. We can't do it. Ephesians 5 says, "Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them." Well, that's what he was doing. He's saying, I am not going to participate in this celebration of sin. That's not hatred. That's not violence. That's not cruelty, even though the left will tell you that it's all of those things. But it's simply a refusal to participate in a celebration of sin. And I mean, just think about it's called Pride Month. Pride is a sin. Pride goeth before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. That's a distinction that culture increasingly refuses to acknowledge. And when Christians expose it, like Jeffrey Little did, it makes people uncomfortable. It makes people uncomfortable in their sin. And that is often taken as, or seen by them as hatred, and seen by them as intolerance. But according to them, Christians don't have to abandon our faith. We just have to stop practicing it publicly. But why can't that standard apply to them? Why can't they do what they do in private and stop practicing it publicly? If that's what they want from us, why can't they do the same thing? Well, because it's a religion. It's a religion, and they have to evangelize. Meanwhile, those same leftists who want Christians to stop publicly acknowledging their faith, stop publicly practicing their faith, those same leftists celebrate Islam and Islam's practitioners, who would, as easily as breathing, throw them off the top of a building or behead them. They celebrate every belief except Christianity, and that's not pluralistic. That's selective. And just to take it to the next level, 1 Peter 3:15 says, always be prepared to give a defense for the hope that is in you. Christians should be prepared to defend their faith. We're commanded to do that. And so if you're not prepared to do that, you're not doing God's will. You're not being obedient. We're commanded to defend it, not hide it, not water it down, not apologize for it. And this is where it gets kind of awkward, because modern institutions, governments, increasingly demand silence from Christians. Whereas, like I mentioned before, Islam gets massive accommodations. Just look at what's happening in Texas. Look at what's happening in Florida. Islam gets accommodations, and Christians get lectures on hate and bigotry. Refusing to participate in this, in these pride celebrations, is harm, and disagreement is bigotry, and biblical conviction is extreme. And that rhetorical framing is important, because once sincere religious beliefs get reclassified as dangerous, punishment becomes easy to justify. And people will say, well, you can say the same thing about Islam. Okay. Over in the UK, do they have a problem with Christian rape gangs? Or is it Muslim rape gangs? Over in the UK, do they have a problem with Christian child brides, Christian cousin marriages? No. So you can try to make that comparison if you want to, but you'd just be looking like an idiot. But Christians, when they publicly espouse their beliefs, they Sometimes we'll get forced out of jobs, suspended. Military members have been disciplined, not so much in this current administration, but it has happened. Teachers have been investigated. Coaches have been fired. And now lifeguards are being, having to go to court over religious symbols. And yes, the pride flag, I alluded to this before, but the pride flag is a religious symbol to the left. Because if you speak against pride, you have committed blasphemy as far as they're concerned. But you can't, if you speak against Christianity, well then that's just free speech. People have the right to disagree with Christianity. And I will pray that you come around, but you have every right to disagree with Christianity. The left cannot say with a straight face that you have the right to disagree with pride. A free society can't compel Christians to publicly celebrate what our faith forbids. That's not a free society. The issue isn't that pride exists, although that is an issue. But that's not the issue. The issue is whether Christians have the right to refuse to participate in that celebration without being punished by their employers, by government institutions. Because if that's the case, if faith is only acceptable in private, meanwhile, we have Muslims taking over Times Square and other large outdoor areas, but once again, I digress. But once our faith becomes only acceptable in private, freedom of religion becomes freedom of silent opinion. Biblical Christianity was never designed to blend in with culture. It was designed to stand apart. It was designed to stand against it when necessary. And it's necessary. And I commend Jeffrey Little for doing exactly that. All right, we got, I wasn't going to talk about this story. I wasn't going to get into it. I was going to save it for the Saturday show. But the story that I was going to do upon preparation and last minute preparation on that story, some questions came up and I want to make sure I get it right. So I moved this story up. And this is, we're going to talk about Jill Biden. Jill Biden has a memoir coming out, and she did an interview that the full interview is going to air on Sunday, I believe, on CBS. But some excerpts have come out, and one of them has caused a firestorm. And let's just go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll get into it further, because it's a doozy. All right, there we go.
Were you horrified as you saw it unfold?
I wasn't horrified, I was frightened.
because I had never, ever seen Joe like that.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
Before or since? Never.
Or since?
Yes, or
You've
since.
never seen him like
Never.
that?
No.
I don't buy that for a second. And if you've been paying attention, you don't either. There is absolutely no way that she can say that there's no way she can say that she's never seen him like that. There's actual video evidence to the contrary. And in that same interview, she said that she thought he was having a stroke. How do you say that you thought he was having a stroke? I mean, that's not something that you just throw around, especially a spouse who's had to deal with his medical issues in the past for years. He's had a brain aneurysm and he's had a few other medical issues on top of his current cancer diagnosis. They told everyone that it was just a bad night. And the American Pravda acted offended when people noticed what was going on. And one of the worst press secretaries in the history of the job, Cringe Jean-Pierre, coined the term cheap fakes with respect to Biden's obvious mental decline. She said, as you saw in the video, she said she'd never seen him like that before or since. I submit this as evidence that she is completely full of it. He thought he was talking to Jill in that instance. And Jill had to rush over and say, no, 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 I'm Jill. She's someone else. And I'm not sure who exactly that was. But come on. Of course she's seen him like that before. Everybody has seen him like that before. And here's more evidence.
Look, here's the deal.
Let me say this simply and clearly.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. You know how we talk about it. Are we the people? Folks. We gotta, it's just, yeah. But you gotta, I mean, we gotta reassure, look, here, my message to everybody I talk to is play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. I got hairy legs.
Oh, never seen him like that before, huh? Okay. I think we've established well enough that she is lying. And then immediately after the debate, they were doing damage control. He had a cold. He had over-prepared. Meanwhile, before the debate, the people who were prepping him were saying that he would be in the room for 20 minutes and he would go to the pool. And even at his sharpest, which is not that sharp, 20 minutes wouldn't have been enough for him to over prepare for anything. It was misinformation. Meanwhile, millions of Americans saw him completely vapor lock numerous times on that debate stage, lose his train of thought, stare off into space, and struggle to finish sentences, which Jill was sitting right next to him when he couldn't finish a couple of those sentences. But she'd never seen him like that before. Never seen him like that before. This clip we're going to show you right here was right after the debate. Right after where she thought he was having a stroke. Because if she really thought he was having a stroke, she would have taken him to the hospital. But this was right after the debate. And
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
she was treating him as if he was a fifth grader who got a decent mark on a test or won a spelling bee or something. That's not how you speak to a grown man who has all his mental faculties about him. But yet, we're supposed to believe that she'd never seen him like that before or since. The issue, obviously, the issue isn't whether or not he was declining or on the decline at that point. He obviously was, and he was 78, 79 years old, something like that, throughout the campaign. And then, well, everybody how old he was. He was obviously not the same as he was when he was in office and when he was in the Senate. So that's not the issue. The issue is that we were completely lied to and gaslit about it. We were told not to trust our lying eyes on the clips that we were seeing, not to trust what we could see live. And people have since come out and said, people who defended him, but have since come out and said, yeah, Jamel Hill was talking about how he was at a dinner, or she was at a dinner with him and could tell that something wasn't right. This is a clip of Alex Thompson, who wrote a book with Jake Tapper about Biden and his decline. Of course, he waited until after Biden was out of office before, he and Jake Tapper waited till Biden was out of office before they did this, even though they'd been talking to people beforehand. But let's just listen to what he has to say, because this is his response to Jill Biden saying that she had never seen him like that before.
Say here. Well, she says that she's never seen him act that way before or since, but in the interviews that over 200 of which that Jake and I did, other people did see him act like that in the months before and in the months after that. And those moments became increasingly hard to predict. And the White House was increasingly trying to manage them to keep those moments out of public view. And eventually, during the debate, they could no longer hide those moments from the public. I'd also say that what she just said there is very much at odds with what many of Biden's top aides said at the time and have said, since the 2024 election, which is they didn't think the debate was that bad. And they thought the Democratic Party way overreacted. They certainly didn't think that he was having a stroke at the time. And they thought it was, he was clearly trying to say big pharma and instead of beat Medicare, and that this was a whole, tempest in a teapot overreaction. But Jill Biden is now saying that at the time when she was watching, she thought her husband, the President of the United States, was having a stroke.
Yeah. There's no possible way. There is no possible way she thought he was having a stroke at that time. And if she did think he was having a stroke and then still proceeded to parade him out after the debate at that rally and rallies the next day, that tells you what her main motivation was. And it wasn't his health. It was her gravy train. They spent years telling us that critics we were being dishonest for pointing out all of these things. We were engaging in ageism. It was propaganda. But then the debate happened and we all saw it happen, saw it in real time. And now she's putting out this memoir and she's trying to reframe the entire thing. And it's just, I will be surprised if she sells as many copies of her book as Hillary Clinton sold of her most recent book, which I think like a month after it came out, it was in the discount bin at Costco for like $2 or $3. I'll be surprised if that doesn't happen with this book. People are tired of being told that what we're seeing is not reality. It's a familiar pattern. That's not happening. Okay, yeah, it's happening, but it's not that big a deal. And then depending on the situation, then the next evolution of that is, okay, yeah, it's happening and it's a good thing. No, I'm not saying that. That's the progression for health issues like this, but that's the pattern that you see. And then obviously you're wrong for even noticing the pattern. People don't trust these people. People don't trust the media, the American Pravda. People don't trust anything anymore because the only time that they acknowledge reality is when they lose control of the narrative. That's right. Getting ahead of the transcript coming out. Jill wants to lay it at the feet of a stroke. Yeah. I agree. That is bull. And we all know it. Everybody knows it. But the American Pravda dutifully is going to run with it because that's what they do. All right. I had a couple of other clips I was going to play, but we are just about out of time. So I will leave it there. And maybe after the whole thing airs, we'll talk about it a little more, but I think you get the idea. All right, y'all. I am Big E, and you have been watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where you can catch our great lineup, Sackhead Sean, with the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense, every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And BZ with the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. And Lyle Armstrong with Beer and Bullstein every Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. For the next few weeks, I think Sackhead Sean and BZ are not going to be on. They are dealing with some personal things and just taking some time off to recharge. And so we look forward to them coming back when they are ready and raring to go. And so for now, and Jersey Joe has been off for a while, and I'm sure he's coming back soon. So for now, it's just going to be me with the Mission Ready Men briefing and Lyle with Beer and Bullstein. So please be sure to check us out and share the shows and share the channel and let everyone know. We still want to be able to grow and reach as many people as we possibly can. So pray for us, pray for BZ, pray for Sackhead Sean, pray for Jersey Joe, pray for all of us that we continue to break through and reach a bunch of you for the rest of the year going through into the midterms. All right, that is going to do it for the briefing. We're not just here to fill the air, but we're here to equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. And if anything that we said here tonight matters to you, please don't just watch, but share it with a guy who wants to hear this and bring him into the fight. And if you want to wear what you stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of the great designs that we have over there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And while you're there, click on the SHR shop. And again, check out all of the great designs that we have for the shows, including this great 250 Reasons to Read Source Documents t-shirt in honor of our 250th anniversary as a nation. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.